All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, there's an old saying that many times if you want to hear the truth, go to an angry person, a drunk, a child, or a person who's just so old that they don't give a shit anymore. And we know what category Mr. Walt Clyde Frazier fits into. He's become very fond of telling his version of the unabashed truth, especially in the last 5 to 10 years or so. And he's never scared to give you his take on who he views as the best players in the history of the game of basketball. For those of you who do not know, Walt Clyde Frazier was a standout point guard / shooting guard of the New York Knicks from the late 60s all the way throughout the 1970s, and was probably one of the top 5 players in the entire league at certain points in his career. So he does have the standing to make the evaluations that he's going to make. He basically is going to say that LeBron James does not even deserve to be in the category of being considered as a top 4 all-time player, aka a quote-unquote Mount Rushmore player. That is going to lead to a lot of hijinks that we're going to see ensue in this segment. Pay very close attention to Miss Chiney Ogwumike, who's a female basketball player, and she's going to exude some of the qualities that I often touch on when it comes to the quote-unquote liberal black female, or just a liberal female, period. That being that she's going to grab a point or an attempt at a point that doesn't exist and be so fervent about it that she's going to make an ass of herself. Unfortunately, the 2 other men involved in the conversation / debate, Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, are so fond of venerating and worshiping the quote-unquote feminine principle, or the quote-unquote divine feminine, that they do not shut her down because they themselves did not do the proper research. What I'm basically referring to is that Chiney Ogwumike is going to take a small portion of an interview that Walt Clyde Frazier had with Sports Illustrated, in which he states that Steph Curry was the first unanimous MVP, and that in his view, they should apologize to Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. She, for some reason, maybe due to poor reading comprehension or the fact that she did not read the article, seems to infer from that small blurb that Walt Clyde Frazier is saying that Steph Curry is a greater player, or that his achievement of being a unanimous MVP should put him or rank him above LeBron James, when the article says nothing of the sort. Walt Clyde Frazier clearly implied nothing of the sort, so I have no idea where she got that from, other than the fact that she has poor reading comprehension, and or she was just trying to put forth a hot take and act like she was bringing smoke to the segment. Either way, we're going to get to the nitty-gritty. So, of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
The Hall of Famer Walt Frazier says Wilt Chamberlain is the only Superman to ever play the game. LeBron James isn't even on the Mount Rushmore.
I agree with you, Walt. I don't agree that Wilt Chamberlain deserves to be on the quote-unquote Mount Rushmore, the hypothetical basketball Mount Rushmore. But I could probably see a better case for him than even for LeBron if I was someone who was born in the 1960s or someone who was born in the 1940s like Walt Clyde Frazier, because then I would probably have an even greater understanding of how dominant Wilt is. As of right now, I have Wilt in my top 10, but I have him in the bottom half of the top 10 because of what I know about him as a basketball player. That being that many times in pivotal moments, he was nowhere to be found when his team needed him. If you pay very close attention, most of Wilt's most renowned performances and or games came during the regular season. He was someone who tended to disappear in big spots in the postseason. Wilt Chamberlain, to a great degree, was pretty much the LeBron James of his day, an unbelievable athlete who stood out, was at least 2 levels above everyone else when it comes to his physical presence and the dynamism of his athleticism. But when those crucial moments came, many times he crumbled, very similar to LeBron, especially before he went to Miami. But once again, when we pay very close attention to this segment here, it says Curry was the only unanimous MVP. They should apologize to Russell and Chamberlain for what they did for the game and the dominance they had. Jordan is up there too, well deserved. LeBron, I don't think, is right up there with those guys. He's not on Mount Rushmore, but Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell, Robertson, those guys were magnificent in what they did for the game. Now, I will say this. I agree that Jabbar and Russell should be on the quote-unquote hypothetical basketball Mount Rushmore. The other 2 heads on that mountaintop should be Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. Just my view of it. I can't put Oscar Robertson on that mountain ahead of Magic Johnson. But my father might say different. Who knows? Like I say, it's a generational thing. I just don't think that Oscar Robertson did enough winning for him to be on that mountaintop. But as we all know, in that era, there was no free agency. Whoever you were drafted to was pretty much who you were with until the end of your career. And Oscar Robertson actually played a pivotal role in bringing free agency into the NBA, at least the early incarnation of it, which was the reason why he was able to eventually end up on the Milwaukee Bucks and go to the finals twice, I believe in 4 years, winning one finals in 1971. I think he was there for 4 years. Might have been 5 years, but I think it was 4.
Told Sports Illustrated last month, quote, Curry was the only unanimous MVP. They should apologize to Russell and Chamberlain for what they did for the game and the dominance they had. Jordan is up there too, well-deserved. LeBron, I don't think, is right up there with those guys.
Because he's not, at least when it comes to being on the Mount Rushmore. I will put LeBron there with Chamberlain, but once again, I never saw Wilt Chamberlain play. All I can go by is who did what in the playoffs and who had more pivotal moments. I think that LeBron has come through bigger in the clutch in pivotal moments than Wilt has done. I believe that LeBron has been more impactful for his teams than even Wilt was. Some of those Philadelphia teams, they should have competed better with the Boston Celtics teams than they did. And in many of the biggest games, Bill Russell actually had better stats than Wilt Chamberlain, as Max Kellerman himself is going to attest to over the course of this segment.
Not on the Mount Rushmore, but Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell, Robertson, those guys were magnificent in what they did for the game. My girl, Shanae Ogumake here with us. Good to see you.
Hello, nice to see you.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. Stephen A.,
Yeah.
what is your reaction to these comments
Well,
by
first of
Frazier
all,
snubbing LeBron?
I've known my brother Walt Frazier for many years. Mad love, respect, and admiration for him. I respectfully disagree, but I'm willing to acknowledge it's really all about preference. Because certainly with certain numbers you can't deny. Like Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points a game one season.
Do I think that Wilt Chamberlain could average 50 points a game in this current NBA? Probably not. But if someone were to say, do you think that James Harden could average 40 points a game in the modern NBA? I would have also said probably not. And if James Harden wanted to do that, he could do that this year. So who knows what Wilt Chamberlain could do if you transplanted him or transported him from the early 1960s to 2019 basketball where they can barely touch you. Who knows?
The hell are you going to say? Do you know that there has never been a season in which Wilt Chamberlain averaged less than 18 rebounds per game? Ever.
Well, that's because the game was faster back then and they got more shots up, so that means more rebounds. Contrary to what people think today, today's basketball is not the fastest basketball that has existed. Back in the 1960s, the pace was faster than it was today.
So we understand from a numbers perspective, there's certain things that, you just can't compare. I view it differently. My Mount Rushmore, for everybody that doesn't understand, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that
Agreed.
that I would take even above Russell, even above Chamberlain.
Well, you have to take Kareem because he won 6 titles. And beyond that, he was as dominant in college as he was in the pros. And beyond that, he was as dominant in high school as he was in college. Kareem, without a doubt, had the most dominating overall basketball career of any NBA player ever, other than maybe Bill Russell, who also was equally dominant in high school and college and won 11 championships in the NBA, but that was a pre-modernized NBA.
Wilt Chamberlain retired in 1973. He started playing in 1959. Damn it, I was born in 1967. What do you want me to say? I didn't see the man really, okay?
I agree with you. That's probably the only reason why I have Wilt Chamberlain so low on my list. If I had gotten a chance to see him play, who knows? I might put him above LeBron. Or maybe I wouldn't. Who the hell knows?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar didn't retire until 1989. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was on those championship teams in the 80s. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played 20 years in the NBA. And oh, by the way, he's the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. And is the...
For now. It's very clear that LeBron wants to catch Kareem. LeBron already has his fake-ass speech ready for when he passes Kareem in points. Who would have thought a kid from Akron, who's not even a scorer, would break the NBA all-time point score record? I can't believe it. I'm just a kid from Akron.
The individual in the history of any sport that had one unstoppable move. Period. There's never been another person in any sport. One move, you knew what he was going to do, when he was going to do it, how he was going to do it, and there was nothing you could do about it.
Well, I'm not going to quite agree with you that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the only player to have an unstoppable move. I would say that his move was the most unstoppable. Michael Jordan's fadeaway was also unstoppable. Hakeem Olajuwon's fadeaway was unstoppable. His dream shake was pretty much unstoppable. But if we're going to say the most unstoppable, then yeah, Kareem.
Obviously, MJ's on my Mount Rushmore. Irvin Magic Johnson is on my because of how he revolutionized basketball in terms of pushing the ball up the floor, up tempo, fast break, and getting everybody else involved. You want to look at individual numbers? There's plenty of dudes that I can pick better than Magic Johnson. Individual talent. But when you talk about being a floor general and really elevating the team concept and making it shine.
Look, there's no question about it. If we're going to have a discussion about which NBA players made their teammates better, it's Magic Johnson and everybody else. And it's not even that close a second. It'd be Magic Johnson. You know what? I won't even say that it's not that close a second because Larry Bird would be right there as well. But if we're just strictly talking about making their teammates better, Magic Johnson did that better than any player in the history of the NBA. Magic, Larry Bird, Tim Duncan, those will be the players that come first to mind when I think of the players who made their teammates better, greater than any other great player did.
Revolutionizing a game in that capacity, I think that you have to sit up there and look at Magic, just my opinion. And then last but not least, I'm going to put LeBron up there.
That's where we depart, Stephen A. Smith. I don't understand how you could have LeBron James over Bill Russell. I really don't understand that. Once again, Bill Russell, by far, the greatest defensive player in the history of the NBA, by far. That's before we talk about the rebounding. That's before we talk about the leadership. That's before we talk about the basketball IQ. That's before we talk about the winning. Not just in the pros, but in college and high school.
LeBron up there for this reason. 6'9", 260. When he goes to you, you're a contender. When he leaves you, you're a lottery team.
Well, here's the problem with that, Stephen A. Smith. For you to get on Mount Rushmore, it has to be more than when he goes to you, you're a contender. It has to be when he goes to you, you're a champion. That's why I cannot have him on that list. I wouldn't even put LeBron James over Larry Bird right now. Now, if LeBron is able to win a championship this year, then I will probably have to put him above Larry Bird. Probably. But as of right now, I have Larry Bird above him. Larry Bird's impact in just his first 7 or 8 seasons was just as accolade-filled as LeBron James has been for 17 seasons.
Can sit up there and argue about all we want because there's plenty of guys that I would pick to close ahead of LeBron. I would pick Larry Bird to close ahead of. I want him to ball with the ball in his hands before I wanted the ball in LeBron's hands.
Absolutely.
That's a minute or two. But overall, 48 minutes a night, 82 games during the regular season, the body of work, the physical, friction that it brings, and attrition that it brings to you, the physical specimen that he was. What he has done in this era, I cannot take that away from him. I think that LeBron James is the greatest small forward to have ever lived.
It's debatable, but I would still take Larry Bird. But it's very close, and I'm sure that LeBron James' fans are going to get very upset. They'll claim, what are you talking about? It's not even close. Look at the athlete that LeBron James is compared to Larry Bird. Here's what I know. In Larry Bird's era, they did not have the knowledge of the human body that they have now. And I'm pretty sure that Larry Bird did not have some of the substances pumping through his bloodstream that LeBron James has had for the last 15 years or so. Nothing against LeBron, but that 2014 offseason, when he left Miami to come to Cleveland, and he lost all that damn weight, started the season terribly, and then took a 2-week in-season vacation to go back down to Miami to quote-unquote work on his body, and then comes back looking like the Incredible Hulk. That confirmed any suspicion that I may have had before that.
That is why I would put him on the Mount Rushmore. Those would be my 4.
Mount Rushmore is easy. It's easy. And by the way, Wilt's numbers don't stack up to Michael Jordan's if you contextualize them properly. And there is a perfectly good argument and a winning argument for Michael Jordan over Wilt. And I don't think it's close, actually.
I would say that it's relatively close, but I agree with Kellerman. If you were to just juxtapose Michael Jordan's numbers next to Wilt Chamberlain's, you quickly find out that Michael Jordan was the better overall player. Even his PERs were right there with Wilt's PERs in the early 1960s when Wilt was averaging 50 points a game, 44 points a game, so on and so forth. And then when you combine that with the fact that Michael Jordan's PPG went from 30 points a game in the regular season to 33.5 points per game in the postseason, he's easily the best player ever in my view, at least in the modern era. I don't think that it's even debatable whether or not Michael Jordan is on the Mount Rushmore. It's just a matter of who are the other 3 faces on Mount Rushmore. I don't think that anyone would try to debate Kareem either. Maybe the other 2 spots people might try to debate whether it's Larry Bird or LeBron James or Magic Johnson or Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain or whoever.
Number one, Mount Rushmore is easy. Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, LeBron James.
No, sir.
Of course.
So we agree on those three.
And Bill Russell.
Now, that's how you know that the real Mount Rushmore is, as I've always stated, Michael Jordan, Kareem, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson. Because you notice that the alteration that Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman had was that one picked Bill Russell and the other one picked Magic Johnson. So it's very clear that the name that should be removed from both of their lists is LeBron James.
Winningest winner of all winning, ever and still.
Before you continue, I'm just of the mindset that you pick one center. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
As opposed to two.
By the way, even at the.
Well, that means that you have to change your mindset, because the Mount Rushmore conversation is not who your own personal team would be, Stephen A. Smith. It's not about who's on your team. It's about who's on Mount Rushmore. In other words, who are the 4 best players in the history of the NBA? Now, if you were picking your own all-time great team, then yes, you'd make more sense. But beyond that, Mount Rushmore only has 4 faces, not 5. A starting lineup for a basketball team has 5 men or 5 faces, whatever term you want to use. So why would that be a criteria for you, that you can only pick one person per position? That makes no sense whatsoever.
If I could take Bill Russell and Kareem,
Sure.
You know.
The problem, well, you call Bill Russell a power forward. The problem with taking Magic, to me, is at their peaks, Bird was better than Magic.
I would agree with that. Well, you know what? I'm not quite sure if I can agree with that, because when we look back at their peaks came at 2 different times. Maybe if Max wants to say that from their inception into the NBA, Bird was the better player, you could say that. But from 1986 to 1991, it's clear who the better basketball player was. Now, people can say that's because Larry Bird got hurt. But let's also keep in mind that in 1986-87, Magic Johnson won his first MVP award. Larry Bird was not hurt yet. In the 87-88 season, Jordan won the MVP, and I believe Bird finished second, and Magic probably finished third. That was Bird's last year being an all-time great dominant player. After that, Magic won in 89 and 90, but his prime did start from 86-87, and he was able to win an MVP award while Bird was still the Larry Bird that we all knew. So, I mean, it's a good conversation, but I will say this. Bird was clearly the better player. He was clearly the best player in the NBA in the first half of the 80s. He actually was combating with Dr. J for the title of best player in the NBA, not Magic Johnson, in the first half of that decade of the 1980s.
Magic kept getting better and had more longevity.
I should say he was combating with Dr. J as well as Moses Malone.
But Bird was a 3-time MVP right in the middle of both of their primes.
3 consecutive years. Not just 3-time, 3 consecutive years.
By the way,
I didn't know he deserved it.
By the way, I was around back then. I don't remember people going, Bird really isn't the best player. Bird was kind of a little Jordan before Jordan. Like, he ruled the NBA and everyone knew it.
Absolutely. And beyond that, Larry Bird was the best player in the NBA in an era where you could argue the case that the NBA had its greatest set of small forwards ever. Now, when we look at the small forward position today, especially say in the last 10 years, you say you have LeBron, you have KD, you have Carmelo, you have Paul Pierce. All of those players you would consider top 50 players at the very least. So you had a relatively strong small forward set in the NBA in the past 10 years or so. But in the 1980s, you had Larry Bird, you had Dr. J, you had James Worthy, you had Bernard King, you had Alex English, you had Dominique Wilkins, you had Mark Aguirre, you had Adrian Dantley. Like, name after name after name. All of those players that I named are either in the Hall of Fame or should be. Because I don't think that Mark Aguirre is in the Hall of Fame yet. But all of those players had 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive years averaging 20-plus points per game and or being on championship quality teams.
Back went out, whatever. And also, Magic had the same, almost Bird-level dominance a little later in his career. I got to say something about Clyde Frazier. Clyde Frazier in Game 7 of the 69 championship with Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West on the floor was by far the best player on the floor. Gave him 36, 19, and 7 in the win. And in terms of Wilt Chamberlain averaging 50 and doing all those things, it came in an era where guys were doing that. Elgin Baylor averaged 37, and Oscar Robertson averaged triple-double, and all those things.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan averaged 37
right.
and a handle.
So you guys differ on Magic.
Agreed.
Bill Russell, where are you on LeBron being snubbed on the Mount Rushmore?
So first of all, you guys are OGs. We all know when it comes to an OG like Walt Frazier, you are allowed to say some things out of pocket. You get a couple of passes, right? I'm not.
She's already introducing her little soliloquy by trying to act as if she's more knowledgeable than anyone else, while patronizing the older generation of basketball viewers. This is the reason why a lot of these female basketball players, especially the younger ones, are not taken seriously, because they don't have the due respect that you're supposed to have when they allow you to be involved in a basketball conversation. To be quite frank, she's fortunate that they invited her to be involved in the conversation, because her WNBA career is probably winding down, and they want to implement her more on ESPN, because as we all know, anything that is Disney related, they're trying to overly empower the woman. But the least that she could do is say, Walt Clyde Frazier is an all-time great, so I understand why he's saying what he's saying. I disagree, and here's why. All of this other stuff, this fluff, is really just a manifestation of the toxic nature of so many of these modern-day liberal females today.
Argue, because sometimes you guys are the OGs of this fine establishment. Sometimes you say things a little bit out of pocket. I'm not going to argue the fact of the OGs in the game, like Wilt, like Kareem, like Oscar, even Magic, even Jordan, being on a Mount Rushmore. The issue I took with Walt's comment is the fact that he elevated Steph Curry's achievement of being unanimous MVP, right, ahead of the summation of LeBron James' career.
Brothers, you should go and read the article. It's a very short article on Sports Illustrated, where their columnist interviewed Walt. I have no idea why she's saying that Walt Clyde Frazier elevated Steph Curry above LeBron James. Nothing like that is anywhere near in the article. The only conclusion that I can come to is maybe she does not understand what quotation marks mean. Walt Clyde Frazier's comments are enclosed within quotation marks. Anything that is not within quotation marks are the thoughts or the interjections of the author. That's it, or the columnist per se. When you read the article, when he mentioned Steph Curry, it was in response to something that the columnist must have brought up. He said Steph Curry was the first unanimous MVP. The league should apologize to Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain because they were so dominant. In other words, what he really was saying was that Steph should not have been the first unanimous MVP. It had nothing to do with LeBron. He mentioned LeBron later on and said that he does not think that LeBron is on the level of a Bill Russell, of a Walt Chamberlain, of a Michael Jordan. That's all he said. So I have no idea where she's getting that from. But it's common knowledge that females today concoct points in their head that don't exist and then argue based on that delusional point. Nothing against her, because certain dudes do that as well. I've had guys come into my comment section and claim that I implied something or I said something that was not said in the video, and they're writing me a damn essay about something that I never said or that they inferred because they're emotionally unstable or mentally unstable. And I'm not quite sure if Chiney Ogumike actually read the article, because what she's saying here has no basis in fact whatsoever.
Ahead of the summation of Kobe Bryant's career. Now I'm the young head here, so I feel like I can speak to the new age players. And the reason why LeBron or even a Kobe, you talk about the comparisons between LeBron and a Steph. You're glorifying Steph's one unanimous MVP career, right? Season. LeBron, these guys both have the same amount of championships, right? 3 championships. They both average about 27 points over the course of their career. But since then, LeBron James, overall, the whole point of his career has been more impressive. LeBron has 4 MVPs to Steph's 2. LeBron has 3 finals MVPs to how many does Steph Curry have? 12 first-team All-NBAs to Steph's. LeBron's number 4 on the all-time scoring list.
Who's comparing Steph to LeBron?
Thank you, Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman is wondering why she's... Why is she changing the topic of the conversation to some rant on LeBron James over Steph Curry? Who in the world would ever say that Steph Curry is a better overall player than LeBron James? Now, one might be able to say that Steph Curry's impact on this current NBA has been more impactful than LeBron's impact has ever been. You can argue that. But to say that Steph Curry is a better player than LeBron James, nobody would ever say that. And I think that Max Kellerman is confused because he's like, what the hell is this bro talking about?
No, the quote in which he said that Steph is unanimous. That achievement period allows Steph to be the number 1 new age guy.
Yeah,
right?
He never said that. I read the entire article because when I watched this segment, I'm like, what is this broad talking about? I said to myself, maybe she read the article and the article says something different than the blurb here. Look at Max Kellerman's face. He's confounded because knowing Max, he probably read the article himself and he's like, this bitch is batshit crazy, but let me just chill out because I don't want any smoke with these feminists at ESPN.
And then agreed with Kobe as well, because Kobe, people forget the defensive aspect of Kobe Bryant, 9-time first team all defensive. So to me, that's the only
Kobe
thing
made 9-time first team?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because he had no business making no damn 9-time all defensive first team. Kobe Bryant was a very good defensive player when he wanted to be. On average, he was average. He did have some standout seasons, especially in the early 2000s and late 2000s in their championship years, where he was ranked very high when it came to defensive win shares. But the NBA was trying to craft Kobe as this generation's, or I should say the 2000s version of Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan made all of those all-defensive teams. They had to throw Kobe on there as well. Even though for most of us who watch him play on the defensive end, he used to get lit up all the time. All the time that dude would get lit up. Kobe Bryant I'm talking about. When he tried hard, when he strove hard, he could make an impact defensively, but he was nowhere near, or should be nowhere near considered the defensive impactful player of a Michael Jordan or a Gary Payton, etc. So it seems to me that her main thing was that she was going to rep for Kobe in this segment here. But for whatever reason, she created and concocted this red herring about Walt Frazier saying that Stephen Curry was a better player or should be on Mount Rushmore and LeBron James shouldn't. He said nothing like that in the article. When you read the article, it seems like the author/columnist really asked Walt Clyde Frazier, who do you think is a better player, or who do you think is the greatest player ever? And then he went on this tangent. He was not even thinking about Steph Curry until the columnist brought up Steph Curry's name.
To me, that's the problem I find here. Like, if you're going to make a Rushmore, I agree, LeBron James deserves to be on there.
No, he doesn't. Now, if you have a second mountain, I wouldn't mind seeing LeBron's face on that second mountain, but on the first mountain, no.
An argument for Kobe Bryant being Bryant to be on there.
Absolutely. There actually is not an argument.
There is an argument.
No, there is no argument for Kobe Bryant being on Mount Rushmore at all. How the hell could he be on Mount Rushmore if you already have Michael Jordan there? Makes no damn sense. Are you saying that Kobe Bryant is a better player than Magic Johnson? No. Is he better than Kareem? No. Has he been more impactful than, hell, even LeBron James? No. And a lot of his fans don't like that when you bring up LeBron James's name in comparison to Kobe Bryant. No. Has Kobe Bryant been as impactful as Larry Bird? No. Has Kobe Bryant been as impactful as Shaquille O'Neal? I know his fans hate when that comparison is brought up too. No. Please keep in mind that Shaquille O'Neal went to the finals with the Orlando Magic. I believe that they were only in their 6th season of existence. He led them to the NBA Finals. Of course, they lost, but they were a precocious team at the time. He leaves them after the next season when they get swept by the 72-win Chicago Bulls, goes out to LA, and is finally able to win a championship in 2000, of course, with Kobe Bryant on the squad as well. Then goes to Miami, and in his first season there, they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and the next season they win the championship. So Shaquille O'Neal's impact cannot be underrated or misunderstood at all. But just to get back to the point, if you had a third Mount Rushmore, you could argue that Kobe's face should be on that one, because that would have the players from 9 to 12. You can make a great argument for Kobe on that one. But on the first Mount Rushmore, 1 to 4, hell no.
Ahead of Steph Curry's achievement.
Kobe ahead of Steph, yes.
She's
Kobe ahead of Steph.
She's not talking about the players before her time.
What quote about Steph Curry? The man has no quote about Steph Curry. All he said was that Steph Curry was a unanimous MVP award winner. And then he went on to start talking about Bill Russell and Walt Chamberlain. So she's making a mountain out of a molehill.
Standard of the new age players being that Steph Curry's unanimous MVP puts that trumps LeBron's career.
But here's the problem with Steph to me, even including Steph. Steph Curry was the leader and best player on a 73-win team that beat the Bulls' mark. And he lost at home to LeBron James to the extent that they needed to add Kevin Durant to that team to get over the 73-win team.
No, sir. The reason why the Golden State Warriors added Kevin Durant was because they could. Now, of course, they needed him to cement that they were definitely going to beat LeBron, but this notion they had to add KD to get over the LeBron hump. LeBron had to come back from down 3-1 against a team that was thoroughly and heavily hampered by injuries. And that was a team that, I mean, they were real light in the ass, that 2016 Warriors team. It's really amazing that they're the squad that broke the Bulls' regular season win total. Because when you look back at that team now, if you brought that 2016 Warriors team to today's NBA basketball, they probably win about 51, 52 games. They damn sure would not win 73. Because the way in which the league has caught up to that style of play, everyone just shooting threes and running and gunning, they would not be as dynamic as they were back then. They really took the league by storm during that time period because there'd never been a team like that before, where you had two players in the backcourt who were both shooting over 40% from three and could make those shots off the dribble, off the catch, anywhere on the floor. And then the ball movement, like, players had not seen that type of play, that style of play, for 20 years. So it really caught a lot of these teams off guard. You bring that team to today, they're probably a 51, 52-win team, somewhere around 4th or 5th seed in the Western Conference.
Fourth with that, just so you know. I always get on him about this. You keep leaving out what you ultimately admitted, that he was not healthy for that series and that Game 7. What I'm saying to you is this. It went Game 7. He wasn't healthy.
Time out.
All right, but that's a fact.
Okay, but time out. That may be true.
Okay,
but
that's
now
all.
when it comes to the last 5 minutes in the fourth quarter and you're leading the greatest half-court offense that ever was, you can't score 0 points. I don't care if you're healthy or not.
Some of those bricks that Steph Curry threw up in Game 7 were so bad, they were so horrific, that I won't say that it looked like he was missing those shots on purpose, but if someone was able to prove that he was missing those shots on purpose, it would not have shocked me at all. Because some of those shots that he missed were so bad. And the only thing that I can say is that there were other clutch moments in the aftermath of that series where he started to miss shots equally as bad. And that told me that that series put a whammy on him. Maybe the pressure got to him or whatever. But he was never truly the same player. And I don't think that he's ever really regained that level of swag and that energy, that mojo that he had during the 2015-2016 regular season, where he was an extremely clutch player. And even in the playoffs the year before, he was clutch in all the rounds of the playoffs. But he's kind of had an atmosphere or an energy around him ever since that 2016 finals, where he started to take on that moniker of being a choker in the playoffs and in clutch spots. And he has not done much to shake that off, unfortunately for him.
Willis Reed hit a couple of jump shots.
We all agree about where Curry's standing is, but you keep mentioning that final as if he were healthy. That's not fair.
If it comes down to Game 7, are you going to win or are you going to lose at your home court? If you dribble up the court and you throw a careless behind-the-back pass and it goes out of bounds.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
If you don't hit any shots, what does not being healthy have to do with scoring 0 points in 5 minutes?
Max, we have LeBron on the list, and I believe he deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore. But we sat on this show and lamented after he won one finals, after he lost one finals, he was sitting there talking about his wrist was hurt.
Oh, well, that was pathetic. You talking about after Game 4 in 2018 when LeBron came to the podium with his wife's black scarf wrapped around his hand, talking about his hand was broke.
Saying the point is you can't go by that.
Rushmore of game changers, absolutely Steph Curry for what he did with the three-point shot. Absolutely LeBron James with how he plays the game. You can even put absolutely Magic Johnson or even maybe a new age KD, something like that. But
I think this broad is confused. And part of the reason why she's confused, well, let me amend my statement. I'm sure that she's confused about a whole lot of shit, but when it comes to this conversation, she seems to be confused because a lot of the people in her age range, they use that term GOAT for everything. They think that there's like 1,000 GOATs. When Walt Frazier is speaking, he's speaking about 4 guys. That's it. He's not speaking about the GOATs from the 2000s or the GOATs of 2019 or the GOATs at the supermarket, none of that other shit. He's talking about the greatest players that he's ever seen play, the 4 guys that he will put on his Mount Rushmore. That's it.
Mount Rushmore, period, you don't put Steph Curry against.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me come to you. Look, while we have you here, because he and I can talk about this till the cows come home. Let's go to you for a second here, just for clarification purposes. Yeah. When you talk about the Mount Rushmore, not only LeBron, first of all, would you have him on there or Kobe, number one, and number two, who would your other three be?
Well, this is where it's tougher.
Just asking you. Just your opinion.
My Mount Rushmore, I have to respect Kareem.
Okay.
I have to respect, and this is where the post position, whatever it comes to, I have to respect Bill, 11 and 13. It's tough because you have to put Jordan in there, in my opinion.
Okay.
Correct. And then if you're going to have a new age, I'm going to put LeBron because that's the hybrid.
Well, the only reason I didn't pick Russell is because, to me, I have to pick between Russell, Kareem, and Wilt.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's the only reason. I just want to make sure.
That's according to you. You don't have to do that. That's nonsense. For example, if I thought that Kobe Bryant was a top 4 all-time player, I would put him on Mount Rushmore. I wouldn't say, oh, well, you can't have Kobe because Jordan's there. That makes no sense. But that makes no sense at all because we're not going by position. But since we're going by player, we have to evaluate all the players and how great they were. When they do the vote or, the tally for who's going to win this season's MVP award, it's going to be James Harden, it's going to be Giannis, it's going to be LeBron James, it's going to be Luka. They're not going to say, well, we can't have this guy in the top 4 because they play the same position. Luka plays the same position as James Harden, so we can't have that. That's how Stephen A. is supposed to be thinking about this.
Make sure that everybody that's watching is very, very clear about that. I'm only going to pick one center. Of course, Will's an 11-time champion. I'm going to pick one center.
Bill Russell. One word about Will real quick. And I know, I'm only going to pick one center. He's passed, and, you want to respect it. You got to tell the truth. Wilt Chamberlain was notorious for giving you what you didn't need in that moment. He wanted to make a point about passing when you needed him to score.
Yeah, like LeBron James. That's why LeBron is always compared to Wilt. Wilt was the LeBron James of his era.
Knicks. He wanted to score when you needed him to distribute the ball more. There's a reason for all his dominance, and I don't want to hear, Russell had better teams. He did. But there's a reason for all Wilt's dominance. He had 2 over the course of his career. The reason was he was not as great as Bill Russell. And if you don't believe it, look at those Game 7s that Bill Russell put up.
Agreed.
Let's respect Wilt from the standpoint, though, that he beat the Celtics. And Jerry West, the great Jerry West, the silhouette, wouldn't have a championship.
No, of course.
We can do that.
Stephen A. Smith, you made no point whatsoever. You just chimed in to cut Max Kellerman off to act as if you're the great arbiter of basketball.
All day, but we all...
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how things go in the aftermath of Walt Clyde Frazier basically declaring, just to get back to the point because it got so sidetracked by a Guma case, red herring. We'll see what happens if LeBron James chimes in on what Walt Clyde Frazier said about him not being on the level of Jordan, Bill Russell, and Wilt Chamberlain, and Oscar Robertson. But anyway, peace.